Hey guys, welcome to the next tutorial of ethical hacking and penetration testing via Kali Linux. Welcome to the next tutorial of DHCP spoofing. So, before I proceed, let's go ahead and check on Google what DHCP spoofing is exactly and how they actually define it and what is actually the difference and how one can go ahead and spoof that. So, I believe you can see DHCP spoofing is a dynamic host configuration protocol that is a client and a server protocol that automatically provides an IP host with its IP address and related configurations such as subnet mask and default gateway. So as you can see that anytime I go and connect to the internet, I am automatically provided the IP addresses for all of these things. Let me just go and open it out to you. I'm automatically provided these IP addresses and the subnet mask and the default gateway, and these all things are being done by the DHCP protocol, that's dynamic host configuration protocol. So how can you might be wondering, how can one go ahead and spoof a DHCP protocol or something like that? Yes, we can do that, and in computer world we can do anything that we want. So this is one of the layer 2 attacks inside a LAN network that is very dangerous for information privacy and LAN integrity, and it is a spoofing attack. So this is a special kind of attack where the attacker can gain access to the network traffic by spoofing responses that would be sent by a valid DHCP server. So you won't even recognize whether it's fake or it's original. And this attack is using a technique, again the same technique, that's ARP spoofing, also called as ARP cache poisoning or the ARP poison routing, that's APR, and that is a simple LAN attack technique. ARP spoofing will allow the attacker to intercept frames on the LAN and modify the traffic, stop the traffic, or simply snip all the traffic and do whatever he wants. So this is possible because all the communication in LAN is now crossing the attacker's interface, and this communication is vulnerable to packet sniffing as well. So you might be wondering what would be the difference between DNS spoofing or ARP-CP spoofing, because they all do the same thing but still they're different ways. Yes, you are right. The reason being that all of them have different faults and flaws, and sometimes you may not be able to go ahead with the ARP spoofing or DNS spoofing, but one or the other thing always works, because there is one or the other fault in a line and you can always go ahead and take down any kind of network. The only thing that you need would be a proper open port or a proper way to go ahead and break into that firewall. So that's how it will work. So there are different ways which go ahead and finally lead to the same thing, but one thing can be way too hard, whereas the other thing can be way too simple, even though both provides the same thing. And that's why I will be teaching you DHCP spoofing, even though it does the same thing, but it has its own different way, and this will be far easier than the previous versions. So in short words, client PC is sending a DHCP request on the network, as you can see over here. So DHCP response, and this request is a broadcast from all hosts on the LAN, and all the hosts on the LAN will receive it. Only the DHCP server knows what this request means, and in the normal situation only the real DHCP server will reply to this request. So DHCP server is then replying to the client with messages that will configure the host client PC with IP address, subnet mask, and the default gateway. So this is the attacker, the rogue DHCP server, and this is the original DHCP server. So when we have an attacker PC in the network, he will stimulate the DHCP server on his host PC, that's host computer, and with this action he will be able to reply to DHCP request before the real DHCP server, because it's closer to the client host. So it will configure the client host with IP address of the subnet, but it will also give to host false default gateway and maybe even false DNS server address. So what will happen exactly is that when the client PC requests for DHCP response, it will go over here, and since the attacker's DHCP server is nearer than the corporate server, the attacker will quickly go ahead and give a response back to it before it goes ahead and reaches it to the corporate server. And as soon as it reaches it, the first one reaches the DHCP server, no matter even if it goes ahead and gets back to the server, it will go ahead and discard that because it has already received a DHCP response. And later on, no matter what happens, even if it tries to connect to the corporate original server again, they will not be able to connect. The reason being that it has already the attacker has already went ahead and poisoned its cache memory, and no matter which one it tries to connect, it will always connect to the rogue attacker's DHCP server. And it will go ahead and configure the client host with IP address of that subnet, and it will give out a false default gateway as well, maybe even a false DNS server address. DNS server address and default gateways addresses will both be the IP address of the attacker computer itself, and in this manner he will point all the communication of, let's say, the client host to himself. Later he will make possible, it will be possible for him to forward the frames from the client host to the real destination in order to make the client communication more real and possible, so that even if it goes ahead and gather, DHCP server will later go ahead and convert itself for ARP poisoning or in other attack, so that this will be the middle PC, the main, it will act as the hub, and all the packets that will pass, it will pass through the DHCP server, and then it will go ahead and pass to the corporate server and then the internet, and whatever information comes back from the internet, it will then go ahead and come back to the attacker, and it will be the choice of the attacker what to send back to the person. Let's say, for example, this is the internet, this is the rogue attacker, and over here at the random right side there would be, let's say, for example, boy A, and over here it would be boy B, and over here it would be boy A. So what will happen exactly is that, let's say, for example, to be a more practical example, boy A is using WhatsApp on his computer, and he wants to tell the boy B to go ahead, and he's telling that I have the money for your, let's say, I have your pocket money, your dad has given it to me, and this is the account number of your pocket money, and he will send it back on this, and just go ahead and gather the money from your this is bank account, and he will transfer a virtual check over the computer, but it will receive it to this person, the attacker, and he will send back the response that okay, father has not received the pocket money, and he will be giving it to me later on at later point of time. So the boy B will go ahead and respond it back to the person, it's okay, fine, I will go ahead and collect it later from my father, but it will not reach the client PC directly, it will come back to the attacker, and the attacker will send, okay, fine, no problem, I will collect it from the bank. So for both the parties, boy A and boy B, they don't need to communicate anymore, since they both will think that their original message has been passed. But the original message is only known by the attacker over here. The reason being that he knows what is happening and which account number it is, and later on he will go ahead and gather the check, and he will disappear later on. And the people will over here will not even be able to recognize what happened, and later on they both will be cursing each other, stating that they are lying, and yes, that will be the problem between them. And so it will be either this person has went ahead and used all the money for himself, or it will be him. But the attacker, no one will even recognize that he was there, and that's how it works. So the attacker can also sniff frames, and he can also go ahead and strip off the SSL if the person is using SSH service. And as you can see from the picture, the DHCP spoofing device is situated in the local area network position. So he has the possibility to reply to the client DHCP request before the request is able to reach to the real DHCP server. The legitimate server may also reply, but if the spoofing device is on the same segment as the client, its reply to the client will arrive first, and the intruder DHCP reply offers an IP address and supporting information that designates the intruder as a default gateway or the domain name system. So what this person will do exactly, it is that first it will go ahead and respond it back to itself, and the original message will be passed over here. But by the time this response, the original response, the first response comes back from the corporate server, the attacker will already have the access, and the DHCP response may not even pass through this. It may pass if the attacker is already connected. The response will pass through the attacker's point of view, and once it goes ahead and transfers from the attacker's point, then the attacker will even know what the IP address and the MAC ID of the DHCP server are, and what are, let's say, a gateway or default gateway. The attacker may then go ahead and spoof its original gateway, the same as a corporate server. So even if the person goes and tries to get the IP address where it was connected, it will see the corporate server's original IP address and the MAC ID, which are spoofed by the attacker, and they won't even come to know, because they will think that it was normally connected, and it may be some other problem why they were not able to connect, or they have had a loss for some any X amount of money. So And the intruder DHCP server offers an IP address and supporting information that designates the intruder as a default gateway or the DNS server, that's the domain name system. And in the case of gateway, the clients then forward packets to the attacking device, which in turn sends them to the desired destination. So this is known as the MITM attack, and it may be entirely undetected as the intruder intercepts the data flow to the network, but it is not stopping the network traffic, because if it stops, then the client may try to connect to the corporate server in some other way, or he may troubleshoot it, and that is not what the attacker wants. So he will not go ahead and attacker will not go ahead and stop the traffic unless it is actually necessary. So the ARP spoofing can also be used for good purposes, and very often we are being able to see wireless networks that are redirecting us to sign up page when we want to access wireless LAN or internet across the Wi-Fi. So network registration tools may redirect unregistered hosts to a sign up page before allowing them full access to the network. It is mostly used in Wi-Fi hotspots or hotels such as McDonald's or something like that. When you go over there and you try to access the free internet, they will first redirect you to their own Airtel or whichever Vodafone or whichever internet they are using, and they will go ahead and ask you to go ahead and first use your let's say your mobile number to go ahead and register. And as soon as you register your mobile number, you will get a 6 to 7 digit code which you will have to enter, and only then the internet will start. The reason for that would be that any random person can go ahead and use the internet for fake reasons, and the person who is actually going ahead and using that, if he uses for any malicious purposes, then the owner of the Wi-Fi or the hotspot will be able to recognize by using the mobile number, until unless the mobile number is also fake and that is also spoofed from somewhere else. So I cannot say that there can be always solutions to all the problems, because as the number of solutions increases, the number of problems will always increase. And so it is mostly used in McDonald's and other sorts of network to control the access of mobile devices to the internet, and sometimes make user pay for the internet access. So for that purpose, they are redirected using ARP spoofing to a device known as head-end processor that goes ahead and redirects these things. So ARP spoofing can be used to implement redundancy of network services. A backup server may use ARP spoofing to take over a server that has crashed and apparently transparently offer reduced redundancy. So these are the examples that an ARP spoofing is not only used for malicious purposes, it is also used for good purposes, but it depends upon the nature of the person as to how he sees that. So that would be it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I will be starting with the ICMP redirection, and finally the traffic tunneling and port stealing.